Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Abby or Abigail Grace. You can call me either one. And today we are doing my February reading wrap up. In January, I split my wrap up in half and I did Hermione fan fiction and then just like other books that I read. I'm going to do the same this month because I read more fan fiction. So we'll just go through the fan fiction to start and then jump to the other books. So if you do not care about the fan fiction, I will put the time right here on the screen. You can skip past it and just watch my fiction books review. As always, I'm just going to give a brief synopsis, spoiler free, and what I rated each book, and we'll get into it. So, at the end of last month, I read The Right Thing to Do and All the Wrong Things, which were part of the Rights and Wrongs fanfiction series. I read The Auction as well, but didn't finish it until February, so I told you I was going to hold off and you were going to have to wait until this month to hear me talk about it. The time has come, and it feels like so long ago that I read it, but I absolutely loved The Auction. It is, like I said, set in the same universe, but it's an alternate timeline where Voldemort wins the war and all of the order members, the females and some of the males as well, get auctioned off to the Death Eaters and other people, and you're worth more depending on what your status was in the order and if you're a virgin, things like that. But basically Draco spends a lot of money to get Hermione in the auction, and she goes there and he does not mistreat her really. She has actually a really good experience there. Not good, she's still imprisoned and can't leave, but compared to the other order members like Ginny and Ron and Neville, they're getting beaten and things of that nature. And she doesn't really understand why Draco bought her and isn't using her. And they have to go to these parties at Edinburgh Castle, and they're sex parties where it's it's not an orgy, but vibes like that. And at those parties, Hermione gets connected to the rebellion of all of these basically enslaved people and the order members who were able to escape, and starts to kind of work on a counter curse to the tattoos that they all have. And these tattoos are what keep them enslaved, basically, they can't leave, and it is connected to the wards. And so she and Draco start to work on a counter curse for this, because at this point there's something there that we know is happening between them. They kind of aren't admitting it to themselves, but there's something there. And that's kind of the main action. There is a lot of buildup of it's a long book of them until they get to the parties, and then once the parties start, you kind of see okay, there's this rebellion, she's gonna try and whatever, and it does have a happy ending. So that is The Auction. I gave The Auction 6 stars even. I think I liked it more than Manacled. It's a similar vibe in that it's a dark alternate universe, but I liked it. It wasn't quite so devastating, whereas Manacled just ripped my heart out. This one wasn't quite so hard to read, so I had less anxiety and therefore enjoyed it more. Anyway, The Auction, 5 stars. I loved it. Next, I read Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love, and this I actually reread. This is my third time rereading this fan fiction. It's like an all-time favorite, and it's like silly, sweet, like slow burn, but like happy. It's post-war, everyone's happy, and like it's also Draco and Hermione when they're like in their late 20s, whereas sometimes I feel like the fan fiction is like them having this like crazy torrid love affair, like whatever, but they're also 19. So I like that this is like years after the war. Hermione has like an established career, so does Draco, and he's an Auror, and he is tasked with protecting her after a like threat is made against her because of like a project that she's working on. And so they start to, it's kind of like forced proximity. They start to spend a lot of time together because he has to like take care of her. It's like Malfoy engagement rings are used, which I love. Anytime he breaks out the rings in any fan fiction. Anyway, I love this one. It's like sweet and happy, and Draco and Hermione have like the cutest relationship. So 5 stars for Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love. That one and The Auction are both being turned into real books this year. So I'm very excited for both of those. And I think they're coming out on the same day, which is crazy. Then I read She Whom He Harbors, and this is Hermione gets attacked and like cursed by this monster where she's like in a catatonic state, and the only thing that can heal her is orgasms. Because her soul has like come separated from her body, and orgasms like connect the soul and the body is like the science behind it. Anyway, it's kind of crazy. Like a real book would never have that plot, but because it's a fan fiction, it can be whatever you want, and I loved it. I ate it up. It was so good. Truly, like, of course, it's Draco's the one that has to give her the orgasms. Like, they're stuck in this cave that they can't get out, and when they finally do get out, she starts to regress, and so he still has to come and give her orgasms. And that kind of like starts their relationship. It's of course fraught with miscommunication, as all Hermione fanfiction is, where they both love each other, quite frankly, and don't admit it to themselves or each other, and therefore like are in so much emotional pain and anguish because they won't just like have a conversation. But I gave that one 4.5 stars. Next, I read Mind the Bump because I really wanted something like silly and short, because The Auction, Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal, and She Whom He Harbors were like long, very, very long. And so I wanted something short. Mind the Bump was accidental pregnancy. I love accidental pregnancy, and it's Draco and Hermione have a one-night stand, but Draco is already a single dad. Astoria died in childbirth, and Hermione ends up having like a magically entwined pregnancy, which basically means like it's very dangerous, like the birth is dangerous. And so Draco, of course, is terrified that another woman who is carrying his child is going to die in childbirth. And Draco's just like the best dad. He's very sweet. And there's Theodore Knott has like such a fun role in this one. Whereas the other 3 that I read this month were longer and serious, but also focused heavily on Draco and Hermione. Whereas I love to see like Harry and Ginny's relationship, like what's going on with Ron, Luna, Neville, like Theo, Blaise, and I liked that in She Whom He Harbors. or not She Who Meowers, Mind the Bump. I ended up giving Mind the Bump 3 stars. Next, I read Meet Me in Dreamland, and I read this because I read this in my 24-hour reading vlog. So, like, full spoilers happening there. Go watch that video if you want to see me like react in real time to this. But it's basically like Hermione finds this locket and creates this like dreamland where she can go and like live out her fantasies. But what she doesn't realize is that Draco has the twin locket to it, so he also gets pulled into these fantasies with her, and they start like a relationship, having sex in this like dreamland, but they don't realize that the other person is actually the other person. And eventually they do, but Draco is like engaged to Astoria, and there's some twists and turns that I cannot say, but it's like 80% smut. And I listened to part of it on audiobook. The Hermione Archives on Spotify has Meet Me in Dreamland. It's ongoing, so it's not fully finished yet, but if you want to listen to some of it, the narrators are really good, especially the Draco narrator, honestly, is like good. Next, I started Entanglement. Entanglement is actually a whip, which I didn't realize when I started it, but it's like arranged marriage. Hermione marries Draco while she's still in school, so this is her 6th year. So it's while Draco's trying to kill Dumbledore, and that's all canon until after 6th year, and then it like diverges. But they have to get married because, and like soul bond in this special marriage, because Narcissa is going to turn and help the Order, but only if they can provide safety for Draco, and the way that they guarantee that is by having him bond with Hermione, because if he dies, Hermione dies, and so therefore they will protect him because they don't want Hermione to die, and vice versa. So they get married secretly and like are married all through 6th year, but don't like, they have to consummate the marriage, but that's it. Like right at the beginning they have sex one time, but it's like quick and done. But then once Dumbledore dies and like the war like truly breaks out, instead of going to hunt Horcruxes with Harry and Ron, she gets sent to a safe house with Draco, where basically they become assassins for the Order. And because of this like marriage like agreement or bond that her and Draco have, they can't be forcibly coerced to share about things that happen between like while in the confines of their marriage. So the Order uses that to like make them assassins, because they can't be forced to like share anything. So it keeps them protected, which is, you know, it's one of those things where she's like pissed at Kingsley and Moody, and like they're trying their best to win the war, and in turn sacrificing Hermione's like humanity by making her do and kill people. Similarly to Manacled, when they're like, they just use her like as a pawn basically. But as I said, it's a whip and it's not finished yet. So I don't actually know if it's going to be finished, because the last update was like 2 years ago. But whatever. So I did not rate it because it's unfinished. And finally, I read All You Want by Cindy Yu, which she wrote Manacled, and this is her 8th year Hermione Omegaverse fanfiction. So Draco is an alpha, Hermione is unknowingly an omega and goes into heat, and Draco is there for her heat, and they start like a like casual relationship so that he can like send her to dissuade the other alphas from bothering her. But of course, there's a ton of miscommunications, like so many miscommunications that it like makes me want to scream, of like them assuming things, like going through third parties that like twist up their words. And anyway, it's like 70% smut, 20% angst, and then like 5% HEA, like good, happily ever after. It's really well written, like we knew that, it's Senlin Yu, and it was really well done. I actually just finished that this morning, so it's top of mind right now. But I love Omegaverse. I loved Bride by Allie Hazelwood, got me into it, but I also loved The Fake Mate by Lana Ferguson. I've read a ton of other Omegaverse books, and so this was really fun for me. As always, like the Omegaverse differs from book to book, but she does a good job of explaining it. So if you never read an Omegaverse book, you would still understand, and I think like this, although I mean they're not shifters like some like Omegaverse's books are. They don't like shift into wolves, but it's just like the dynamics of like alpha, omega, beta situation. So I ended up giving that 4.5 stars. Those are all of the Hermione fanfictions that I read this month. We are finally going to get into other books. If you have skipped here, and welcome back, we are going to dive right in to It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan. This is an arc that I read, and the basic premise is that the main character, Jane, she is trying to get a movie script like greenlit, and so she like tells a like stretches the truth slash like tells a lie that she knows this famous musician and can get him to like do a song for the movie, which is not true. She does know him, but not well enough to like get him to make a song for the movie. But in order to try and convince him to do the movie, she and one of her coworkers, a man, and his name is, Dan, they go to his hometown because Jack, the musician, is doing a music festival there. So they're gonna go and stay like with his family in his hometown, and while they try and track down Jack to get him to agree to make a song for this movie. Her and Dan end up having this like past that we find out about along the way, and it's her and Dan have to share a room, but they have different beds, and Jane and Dan were like the perfect like opposite attract, like silly, goofy. It was really cute. It was like a rom-com like movie in a book form. Dan was also obsessed with the Notebook, so there's lots of like Notebook references, which was fun. And Jane's like growth throughout the book was like really good. I think Annabelle always writes really good and relatable characters. And unlike her previous books, which have all, I believe, had like single moms or like women in their like 40s, Jane was a little younger, and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Next, I read Yin Yang Love Song by Lauren Kung Jessen, and I talked about this in a video, but she's like a Chinese medicine like herbalist, and he is a like cellist, and they start fake dating to like bring awareness to like the company that she's about to launch, and also because he has this like reputation of being like a heartbreaker, and so it's good for his career. So they start fake dating. Of course, real feelings arise. I did not love this one. I didn't love the aspect of like the Chinese medicine. There was a large emphasis on it, honestly. Lots of like talking about like yin and yang and like balancing and all that, which was like too much for me. I didn't love it. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. Next, I read Onyx Cage Volume 2, which was the last 2 books of the Lachlan Feuds series, but told from Evander's point of view. I loved the Lachlan Feuds. All 4 of those books, I've reread them. I really loved them. And Onyx Cage Part 1, I really enjoyed as well. This one I felt was just very repetitive. We didn't get a lot of like extra details in getting Evander's point of view. Like, it didn't add anything. It fell flat for me. And I love this series. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well. But I think like every other book is 5 stars for me in that series. Next, I read The Right Move by Liz Tomford. And this is fake dating. It's also like forced proximity in that she needs a cheap place to stay and her best friend is like, hey, live with my brother. And so she moves in. They start fake dating in order for because he's a basketball player, his coach to like take him seriously as the team captain. He wants to be seen as serious, so he's like, I need to be in a relationship in order for that to happen, so let's fake date also so you can like move on from her like cheating ex-boyfriend. Ryan Shea was like obsessed with him. I downloaded the other books in this series because I'm really excited to read them and hear about the other characters. But it's your typical romance. There was spice, but it was sweet. I ended up giving this like 3.75, but I rounded up to 4 on Goodreads. Next, I read Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, and this, some people have had negative things to say about it. I do not. No negative things to say here. I loved this. I love Ali Hazelwood. I will read anything she puts out, and this was no exception. It's he's a swimmer and she's a diver at Stanford, and they get kind of forced together because his ex-girlfriend finds out that they have similar kinks, and so they start a like basically solely sexual relationship to explore their kinks with each other. But she's also really good friends with his ex, and so there's some drama that comes with that, and also like she is just very unwilling to accept what the relationship is and struggles with her mental health. She has like a block at the beginning of the book, and she's unwilling to not unwilling, she doesn't want to address the reasons why she has these issues. She's going to therapy, but she's not discussing like the root of the issue. Eventually she does, but this was really good. It was spicy because they explore kink. Like, that's like the main premise. But I loved it. I ended up giving it like 4.75, but I gave it rounded up to 5 on Goodreads. Next, I read Before I Do by Sophie Cousins, and I read this in a video, I think. But either way, this is about Audrey, and she is about to get married, but the day before her wedding, her like one that got away shows up as like a date of someone at the wedding, and it's told in dual POV, so you see her like in the times leading up to the wedding, like her time with this other one who got away, and also her meeting her husband Josh, and you see their relationship progress. And so the question is kind of like, is Josh the one, or is this other guy, Fred, who showed back up in my life, is it meant to be because he showed back up? Is fate trying to stop her from making a huge mistake, or does destiny just have a really twisty sense of humor? I've really enjoyed all of Sophie Cousin's books that I have read, and this was no exception. I actually went into this a little bit hesitant, but really enjoyed it, so I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read Accidentally Amy by Lynn Painter. This was republished because originally it was indie published. She republished it, and I've read the indie version, and now I've read this one, and I honestly don't know that there's a lot of difference. I know there is some, but I couldn't tell you what it was. This is Isabella, Izzy, and she is at a coffee shop one morning, and the barista is calling out Amy, Amy, and no one is picking up the drink, and she's about to be late, so she just pretends to be Amy and takes the drink. On the way out, she runs into what's his name? Blake. And they like kind of have like a little flirtationship. He ends up asking her out later, but then they discover that he's actually like her boss's boss, and she's not Amy. And he gets very upset about that because he was in a previous relationship where she lied, and it's very traumatic for him. But they kind of get past that, but can't be together because he's her boss, and that's against the rules at the company. And then that's kind of where I'm gonna leave you. Obviously they end up together. It's a romance, it's cute, it's kind of like fall. There's some leaves on the front here, like it's set in, I actually don't know, it's like in a city, a random city. But it just gives like New York in the fall. And I really liked it. I ended up giving this one 3.75, but I rounded up to 4 stars. Next, I read You Between the Lines by Kate Naiman, and this is like Elle Woods goes and gets her MFA instead of going to law school. The main character is like definitely giving Elle Woods vibes. Her name is Lee, and she shows up to her MFA program, and her like high school rival is in the same program. You come to find out that they had like an interaction a few years ago in college that caused even more of a rift between them. And so they are like academic rivals. It's academic rivals to lovers. Obviously they end up together. He is obsessed with her, which is just like amazing. I will say, like, they're both there to get their MFA in poetry, and so there is quite a bit of poetry in here, and it's actually well done. I was a little nervous, but I think it's well done. The writing is really good. I loved these characters, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next, I read an arc of Kilted Lovers. The cover says Regally Blonde, so I'm not actually sure what the book is titled, but on Goodreads it's Kilted Lovers, but then the picture says Regally Blonde. I'm not sure what that's about. It's an arc, and it's by Megan Clausen. I've read another book by her, So I was excited to get into this. I love anything about like royals, princes, whatever. Like it just makes me feel like I could fall in love with a royal and be a princess one day. She is like far down in line to the throne, but she's kind of like, she gets in the limelight for some like doing some irresponsible things. And so her parents send her to Balmoral to like spend time away, stay out of the limelight. And while she's there, she falls for the piper slash like, he's like a major piper. Like he was in the military. Now he works there, and he's like giving Jamie Fraser, his last name is Fraser. Oh, his first name's Fraser. And there's like a really good friendship in this. Alice, the main character, like has a great transformation. I really liked this. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, but I rounded down on this one to 3 on Goodreads. Next, I read Pictures of You by Emma Gray, and this was for my book club. I also read this during my 24-hour readathon, so go watch that video because I read Kilted Lovers, Pictures of You, and Happy Place, which I'm about to talk about in that video. But this was our main character. She wakes up with no memory after turning 16. So she wakes up thinking she's 16, but in fact she's married and has no memory of it. So it's her going on the journey of finding her memories. It's dual POV, in like flashbacks, I guess, of her like recovering her memories. It's honestly kind of like a thriller in the sense that like there's like a mystery of like her finding her memories, but there is also like some mystery elements of intrigue. It was really interesting and different, and it also tells a really good story about being in an abusive relationship and trying to leave an abusive relationship, and it's just really well done. I gave it 4.75, but it's close to 5. It wasn't quite 5, but I really enjoyed it, and so did all the girls in my book club. Next, I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. This was a reread. This is only the second time I've read this, and I read it because I went to Happy Place trivia last night. So I wanted to reread this in preparation for Happy Place trivia. If you don't know Happy Place, it's Harriet and Wynn. They have broken up, but their friends don't know, so they have to pretend to still be together on their like annual trip to Maine with their friends. And it's dual POV, so you get to see like Harriet at different times while she's in her happy place, which is Knott's Harbor, Maine, at this house. And also you get to see Harriet and Wynn's relationship and them getting together and them falling apart. And Wynn is just like perfect. I am obsessed with him. He's, in my mind, I'm picturing like Thor. He works with his hands. He's strong. He's got a beard. He's got blonde-ish hair. Anyway, I'm obsessed with them and Harriet, and the friendships in this are just amazing. Sabrina and Cleo and Harriet, they're like trio, and the like issues that they're having with their friendship as they grow older, it's just like so realistic and so well done, and it's 5 stars. I love Emily Henry. It makes me want to reread Funny Story because it's the only other one of her books that I haven't reread, so I might do that soon. And finally, I read First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is everywhere right now, I feel like, and I'm reading it for a anticipated new release video, which I haven't finished filming, but it's going to be good. And this is Lucy and Aiden. They meet when Lucy's daughter calls into the radio show that Aiden works at to talk about her mom's love life. Obviously, Lucy's a single mom and she doesn't date, and Maya's worried about her, but the clip from the radio show goes viral, and so she ends up like doing a recurring guest spot on the radio show with Aiden. And of course her and Aiden start to like have feelings for each other, but he doesn't do relationships, like he doesn't do love, and so obviously that's what she wants. So it's a tale as old as time. She wants a relationship, he doesn't. She says, it's fine, I'll just do casual, and then realizes, hey, I actually can't do casual, and he says, and gets scared. But there's a happy ending, and I do love Aiden, and I love Lucy, and this was really well done. This was my first book by BK that I've ever read, and I will read more. This was good. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. And those are all of the books that I read in February. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for hanging out. If you watched the section about my fan fiction, I love you. Thank you. And I'm excited to read a lot more good stuff in March, and I will see you somewhere else on the internet. Bye, guys.